Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Aravaipa Studios here in beautiful Phoenix, Arizona. I'm Chris Worden, joined as usual and matching, in fact, by Andy Jones-Wilkins. Andy, I'm really excited about our conversation today because this is something that I witnessed firsthand with you a couple weeks ago. Of course, it is Western States season, and I went to Auburn and to the Western States course with you, and I saw your enthusiasm and your excitement and how much this race means to you. So I'm really excited to talk about the race this year and everything that it's going to entail. What does Western States mean to you?
Well, it's the best week of the year, first of all. And I'm thrilled to be able to share it with our Aravaipa audience. What does it mean to me? I mean, it's Christmas and the World Series and the Super Bowl, all rolled into one. I mean, it's a special event. It's a bringing together of people who may have not seen each other for a year, doing something that is really, really hard, and doing something in a very special place. So, what it means to me most of all is that bringing together of the group.
Describe your initial experience with Western States, if you could. Obviously, for those that are unfamiliar, AJW has 10 sub-24-hour finishes, 7 top 10 finishes. But describe your initial experience with the race and, what happened when you got there for the first time.
Yeah, so I first ran the race in 2001, which was a year back then. You probably had, in a typical year, like a 50-50 chance of getting picked in the lottery.
Oh,
you
I wish.
You had to run a qualifier. The qualifiers were wide open, any 50-miler under a certain time or something like that. So I was selected in the lottery in 2001, and I ran the race. And I thought I was a big deal. And it turned out that I wasn't. I made all the rookie mistakes. The batteries ran out on my flashlight. The string on my shorts broke, and I had to hold up my shorts for the last 20 miles. My quads got shot like halfway through. I made the mistake of running with Ann Trayson for a little while. That was a bad idea. So, I mean, my initial experience with it was, like it is for many people, a pretty negative one, but it was also something I really learned from and was able to build on afterwards. So from that point on, here we are 22 years later, and the Western States 100 is just in my blood. It's not only something that I do and something that I participate in, but it's a huge part of who I am.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I was really honored to witness was the fact that you haven't run this race in quite a while, but you've maintained your attachment to and your involvement with Western States. No matter where you've been living all over the country. We know that. You've kind of got this vagabond existence as far as like where you've worked and where you've lived. But whether you were living back east, down in Arizona, up in Idaho, you've always made it back to Western States every year. We even talked about this when we were driving to and from Auburn, how your kids, your sons may have been, moving to a new school or to a new community, but the one thing that they could always count on was returning to Auburn every single year.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one part of our life that's sort of home through all this vagabond existence. I remember a guy I trained with for a long time in the Bay Area, Kevin Sawchuk, who does medical at Western States now. He got his 10-day buckle, I think it was in 2011 or 2012. And I remember when he made his speech after receiving his 10-day buckle, he said, "I'm retired from running Western States, and I'll come back every year, at least for 10 years, to volunteer." Now, he has really valuable skills. He's a doctor, and they deploy him around the course. And of course, he's gone longer than 10 years. I kind of felt the same way. So when I ran it for the last time in 2014, my kids were still there, but they were grown. The kids who had been 3 and 4 and 6 when we first went there were now teenagers and were pacing me to my finish in 2014. But I remember saying to Craig Thornley, the race director, you know what, I'm all in. I am committed to volunteering, to being part of this race for as long as you'll have me. And
where it's a very close-knit community, but it's also a very welcoming one as well. As we have people coming in from outside all the time, and we do our best to make sure that we appreciate their presence.
I would say this, that Western States, as it's become this event that is so difficult to get into, and this year roughly 85-86% are first timers, the way the veterans can continue to give back and be a presence in the event is at places like Michigan Bluff, and in places like pacing and crewing runners, or working as volunteers, or just being part of the event. And you see it happening in a smaller scale with Aravaipa, but just recently, last October, with the 20th anniversary of the Javelina 100, and bringing back Jerry Kilgariff, one of the founders. I mean, Western States has a 30-year head start on Javelina, but nonetheless, there's that richness and that feeling of community. And if you can provide an opportunity for athletes and runners and participants to continue to be involved and continue to be honored after their running and their competitive years are over, it's likely that you'll continue to have them part of the event. That's certainly what's driving me to wake up at 4:00 tomorrow morning and drive right up there to Auburn, because it's something, I just get this flutter in my heart every year around this time, the midweek before the race, and I just can't wait to get up there and be with my people. So I hope everybody at some point, whether they run the race, go to Memorial Day training camp, pace a runner, crew a runner, gets to feel that Western States magic, because there are times that Western States suffers from a little bit of attention fatigue, and people wonder why it's such a big deal and why there's so much hype around it. And I would just encourage people, before they weigh in on that, to go check it out and be part of it. There's all kinds of ways to be part of it. And once you've done that, I think you'll understand. Absolutely.
And as somebody who attended training camp for the first time, I was blown away by, the atmosphere. And to be honest, as somebody who's not attended the race, frankly, I'm okay with not attending the race until I actually get into the race, because it sounds like there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and a little bit of chaos. I mean, obviously, whenever you've got a large race such as this, a point-to-point heading, basically following down a single road where you've got 380 or so runners with their crew and pacers heading, following the action. I'm going to stay clear of it unless I'm working or running at this race. I don't really feel like, at least until I run it, eventually, hopefully, I don't really feel like I want to be an in-person spectator. I'm cool with hanging back and seeing what they do on the live stream. That's one of the great things about Western States, is that through the efforts of the race and Billy Yang, that they're able to actually bring it to us, around the world. And they deal with some difficulties in terms of logistics that we don't deal with a lot of our races here. So that's one of the things that I would like to give kudos to them about, is the fact that the first half of that race, there's really not a lot of cell coverage. There's not a lot of ability to get fresh, active shots on the course. So you're kind of at the mercy of what you can get in terms of signal out there.
Yeah.
So
I'll offer a different perspective too. I completely understand why you might not want to attend the race as a spectator until you actually run it. If you flip that and think about my point of view, I never attended it as a spectator until after I'd run it 10 times. I had no idea, for example, how difficult it was for my crew to get to some of these aid stations. I had no idea how long folks had to wait for the shuttle to come to pick them up, or the hike into Pointed Rocks aid station, or something like that. There's something that the runners are so insulated from some of the reality of Western States that I think everybody who runs it should see the other side. I mean, when I think of the weekend I'm going into this weekend, I mean, I'm going to be working parking at Robinson Flat, a really, really important job.
Yeah.
Not a whole lot of glamour around it, but you know what? If the parking system goes awry and the Forest Service gets upset, that could mean bad news for the race. So there are roles for all kinds of people in all kinds of ways to make sure that race goes off without a hitch. So I think you're making making the right move. Coming to Memorial Day training camp was fantastic to have you there. I mean, it was so much fun to see your reaction to just seeing the trail for the first time and all of the place names. You know, there's so many place names at Western
hallowed ground.
States. You know, No Hands Bridge and Rucky Chucky and Michigan Bluff and Swinging Bridge. And, you know, when you can put a name to the face, so to speak, there's something kind of special about it.
Absolutely. We talked about that, you know, very distinctly at Roby Point, especially. That was one of my favorites, was that you had stories stacked on top of stories about experiences, not only for yourself, but for other runners as well. You know, talking about, you know, the last time you finished in the top 10 and how it basically came down to seconds, you know, on the track and everything like that. I guess that's probably a good way to pivot. The Western States course, a lot of people might not understand like what makes it so difficult, because when you see the base numbers in the elevation profile, 17,000 feet is a fair amount of climb, but it's not like an extremely daunting. I mean, when you talk about other 100-milers, you know, there's 20,000, 30,000 or more feet of climb. At Western States, it's 17,000 feet or so, and a net downhill of, 5,000 feet, I believe?
Yeah. So 22,000 down,
Yes.
17 up, give or take.
So why is it so difficult?
Well, you've got to be a downhiller, first of all. I mean, just do the math. You're starting at around 6,000 and you're finishing at around 1,000. So just, and there's a bunch of stuff in the middle there. So first of all, you've got to be ready for the downhills. Second of all, you've got to be ready for the way that race kind of gets in your head. I mean, maybe you've been trying your whole life to get in. Maybe you've got a golden ticket and you're favored to win. Maybe you're somewhere in between. Maybe all you want to do is get a golden hour finish. Whatever it is, that race sort of becomes larger than life. It's sort of like if you were to imagine standing on the first tee. You're a golfer and you're standing on the first tee at St. Andrews, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of people watching. You know, are you going to hit it straight down the middle, or are you going to jack it into the ocean? So there's a little bit of jacking it into the ocean that happens at Western States. So that has an impact on people. But the other thing is it is a race that wears you down in a kind of relentless way. You know, years ago, Joe Yuhan wrote a wonderful two-part essay in I Run Far called The Western States Killing Machine. And what he talked about was how it's not like, it doesn't just kick you in the face like something like Hard Rock or UTMB, but it wears you down. You think, oh, this is easy. This is a nice, gentle descent. And then there's a few climbs. I'll give you a perfect section for that. Everybody gets to Forest Hill and thinks, oh, I'm at mile 62. At mile 78, I'm going to be down at the river. I'm basically just running downhill to the river. But for about a 5-mile section in there between Cal 1 and Cal 2, yes, you're net going down to the river. But each time you go 2 steps down, you turn back and you go 1 step up. And you go 2 steps down and you go 1 step up. And 2 steps down and you go 1. And remember, you've been climbing all day. You've gone through the canyons. You've been through the heat of the day. You're like, I thought we were supposed to go all the way down to the river here. And you're like, yeah, you are, but you're going to turn and go up a little bit. Those sorts of little things wear on you mentally, especially at the time of the race that they come.
Yeah.
Such that when you get to mile 80, which everybody says, oh, from there, it's super easy and runnable. The vast majority of the people have no run left in them.
That's true.
And they're just trying to get through. But those who do have run left in them they're gonna crush it.
Yeah. One of the things that we always talk about as we cover races, whether it be Black Canyon or Bandera or Heavily 100 Western States, they always say the race begins at blank. Where does Western States begin?
Well, it's interesting you ask. You know, Tim Tweetmeyer, the 25-time finisher, 5-time winner, would say Western States begins at Forest Hill. When I was talking to a couple of the women's contenders earlier this month, they were like, yeah, I think it starts at the river, which is mile 78.
Yeah.
So no matter how you slice it, it starts somewhere between 62 and 78, the racing part. I think that for the middle of and the back of the packer, it really kind of starts when you enter the canyons. So you run through the high country, you get to Robinson Flat at mile 30, so you've done more or less of a 50K, basically a mountainous 50K. Then you have about a 13-mile downhill. Not steep, but gradually going downhill. And then at mile 43, you start going through the canyon. So for a middle and back of the packer, I would say when you get to mile 43, you need to ask yourself how you're doing, how you're feeling, how's your nutrition, how are your quads holding up, do you have any feet issues? Because you're going, that next 19 miles, you're going down, up, down, up, down, up. And a lot happens in that stretch.
Well, one of the things about that, talking about the canyons, this year's Western States is going to have a different look to it at that point in the course. Can you describe your experiences in the past versus what the runners, for those unfamiliar, the mosquito fire was the fire that hit and came so close to houses in Michigan Bluff. I actually might have actually claimed some.
It did claim some houses in Michigan Bluff, yeah.
It's right there. I mean, you're coming into Michigan Bluff and you're coming out of basically a singed forest, or the remnants of a singed forest. Can you describe how that's going to change things for the runners this year as opposed to years past?
Well, as you remember, on Memorial Day, we took a jog down to see a little bit from Michigan Bluff, so heading back up the course. In general, the mosquito fire basically singed 16 trail miles of Western States. Roughly mile 50, so about 5 miles before you get to Michigan Bluff, to mile 66. Shortly after you go through Forest Hill, you go down to the first aid station on Cal Street. The impact of that 16 miles is hard to tell right now. But what we do know is the shade that used to exist in those places, the nice oak trees and manzanitas, are gone.
Yeah.
So whether it's a hot day or a medium hot day or whatever it is, you're going to be exposed to the sun starting shortly after you leave the Devil's Thumb aid station and begin the descent to El Dorado, all the way through Forest Hill and into the Cal Street section. Furthermore, while they've done incredible work getting that trail back up to speed and getting the tread right, and there's soot and dust, and it's just not the way it should be.
There's you had mentioned when we were heading there, talking about how different it was in terms of like having that full canopy and even a little bit of I guess gamesmanship available to the runners in terms of like not being able to see where they stood. Based on what I saw out there, there's no hiding anymore on the way to Michigan Bluff.
No, there's not. And you can see, it was interesting to give you a sense of how the runners felt. I spoke to 2 runners. Casey Lichtai, who's run the race 8 times, is coming back for her 9th. And Katie Asmuth, who's run it twice, top 10 the last 2 times she's run it. And both of them had, and I talked to them at Michigan Bluff on Memorial Day training camp, both of them had a similar reaction. It's kind of depressing down there.
I can understand that.
And that's kind of an interesting, here they are running with all their friends, having this great time. But when you think about being 52 miles into a 100-miler and potentially feeling like, oh, this is kind of depressing, one wonders what kind of impact that might have on a run. I'm not saying it'll have any impact on the front of the race or who wins or whatever else, but we know we run a lot on feel. We run a lot on how being in the environment makes us feel, and having beautiful views or smooth trails or something like that. And when both Katie and Casey said that, and they looked around and they were just like, this just is like, it'll be interesting to see how that affects the front of the field, but also everybody else. It's like all of a sudden you're in this place that's kind of like a wasteland.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that's kind of it's an unfortunate fact of running out here in the Western United States. We've seen it here in Arizona, Colorado, California, that wildfires do on sometimes take whole swaths of our running community. The difference is that in most cases, I don't know about you, like for instance, we had the bushfire out here and Mount Ord was ablaze. You could see it from 40 miles away. The thing is that we just didn't run on Mount Ord. Yeah. So unlike that, at Western States, you've got to go through the canyons.
Right. Yeah.
So
there's no reroute possible for
those.
For Western States.
I think that might actually be a bit of an advantage, psychologically, to those who have already been through it and seen what it looks like. Those that were there Memorial Day weekend, those who might sneak down this week and check it out. Because if you have an emotional attachment, such as I know you do, and I know Casey does for sure, like if they if a runner has, that emotional feel to it and sees the canyons, it could be an emotionally jarring situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, maybe they can recover and get over it and just rely on their pure running count. But at the same time, it's really it's going to be interesting to see how the runners handle that.
It will be. It will be.
One last aspect of what they're going to have to handle on the course before we get into the runner specifics. What do we know about the snow up at the front of the race?
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be a snowier race than it's been in the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. Probably going back to, it's probably going to be as snowy as 2017, which means patches for the first 30 miles, sometimes big patches. You won't have runners running for 5 consecutive miles on snow, but you'll have a lot of transition. Run over a snowbank, get down on dry ground, go up to another snowbank, go down to sort of muddy, slushy stuff. It will not be a good situation for getting a rhythm.
Yeah.
Once they get to mile 30, Robinson Flat, or 31, the snow will be gone, and it'll be sort of smooth, clean trail at that point. So I think for both the front of the pack, the middle of the pack, and the back of the pack, they're going to need to think about, okay, managing the snow, getting through the snow, finding a shoe that's going to work. It's going to transition from being frozen to being sort of semi-frozen, like corn snow, to being just full-blown slush.
Okay.
So I think that transition, plus just having to have wet feet for 30 miles, is something runners are just going to have to deal with.
That makes sense. Pivoting to the field, I guess we can just dive right into the women's field. Of course, the very top of last year's field is not returning to Western States this year, but that doesn't mean that the field is not stacked. When it came to making my fantasy picks and trying to find a top 10, I was stalling at 16. And that also takes into account the fact that we have 3 highly talented women, 3 women that I probably would have put in the top 10, or at least strongly considered it, in Stephanie Flippen, Devin Yanko, and Marianne Hogan, all not being a part of the race this year for varying reasons and concerns. Hopefully, all of them are, recovering and recuperating from whatever ailments befell them to cause them to have to drop out of Western States. But I feel like the discussion on the women's side really starts and begins with one name. I mean, Courtney Dauwalter is running this race. And it has been over 5 years since Courtney Dauwalter has not finished first in a trail ultra that she has completed. That's an absolutely staggering thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally been like one DNF at Hard Rock, and other than that, 5 years, she's been untouchable. And she's won some of these races by large margins. What's your thought on Courtney coming back to Western States for the first time since 2018 and seeing what she can do here?
Well, I mean, it's hard. Well, she was in 2019. Remember, she did drop with a hip injury at the river. But I mean, it's, unless you're Finn Melanson, it's impossible to bet against Courtney. And so any race Courtney's in, you gotta pick her to win.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely picking her to win. She is focused. She's not thinking about Hard Rock. Hard Rock will be there when she finishes this. She wants to run this race hard. She wants to win it. She doesn't usually think about course records, but she's running it to win it, and she have to be the prohibitive favorite. You cannot ignore, however, Katie Scheid.
Yeah.
Yes, a mountain runner, someone who's an American living in Europe. I mean, I talked to her coach, Jason Koop, a couple of months ago, and he had to convince her that, you don't get to run with poles at Western States. Like, she does everything with poles over there.
Yeah.
Right? But there's 2 runners who were not in the race last year who I think either of them could win the race. Then you've got this really interesting situation, right, where you've got this group of women who were in the race last year in the second 5.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Right. So
all coming back.
These are not in order, but Leah Yingling, Katie Asmuth, Camille Herron, Emily Hawgood, Taylor Nolan.
Yeah.
Okay. They were 5 through 10. Now, if you look at the history of the race, oftentimes women and men who finish in the 6, 7, 8 learn their stripes and come back. I'll never forget when Timothy Olsen finished 6th in 2011 and won the race in a course record in 2012. Mm-hmm. So I would not fall asleep on any of those. of Leah, Katie, Emily, Taylor, and Camille as runners who did the race last year, conducted themselves well, and ran an amazing race. Then you have Courtney and Katie, and then dropped out, but I saw you put her pretty high on your picks. She dropped out, I believe, last year, but is a strong runner and came back guns a-blazing at Black Canyon to get her golden ticket, and that's Keely Henninger.
Yeah.
And I have to imagine that Keely wants this bad. So in the have never run it before but are really talented, you have Katie Scheid.
Yeah.
You have run it before but didn't run it last year or didn't finish it last year. You have Courtney and Katie and Courtney and Keely, and then you have last year's 5 through 10. So right there, you've got an incredible group. And then I know where you're smiling about. You've got Heather Jackson.
Yep.
An absolute wild card. She burst on the scene here at Javelina, came over from Ironman, has embraced the sport. Her partner, Wadi, has embraced the sport. I spent a bunch of time with them at Black Canyon. She's continued to race gravel at the same time as she's running ultras. And I mean, she wowed us for 4 loops at Javelina.
Yes.
Before, fading to a 4th place finish. But, that's a group of 10 women right there. Yes, really sad that Devin and Marianne and Stephanie are not here, but just that group of 10. Wow.
And there's several other names that, like, for instance, talking about first-timers in addition to Heather Jackson, Ida Nielsen.
Yeah.
Who is
I
like,
can't believe she's a first timer, by the way. She seems like she's been around forever.
Yeah, she's been racing here in Arizona for several years, has the Crown King course record, came out to Black Canyon, was, in the lead or right at the front of the pack in Black Canyon, fell apart at the end, but then came back at Canyons and imposed her will on that course. So I feel like Ida is somebody that we have to talk about as well. Megan Morgan, who finished 3rd at Black Canyon. I mean, we've got some. Nicole Bitter is a name we haven't even yet.
I can't believe we just didn't mention Nicole Bitter. She's got the most Western States finishes of this group.
Yeah, 4 or 5 top 10 finishes. I mean, another amazing athlete. I saw Nicole out there on Memorial Day weekend doing her homework. I mean, and that's not even taking into account a lot of the foreign runners, such as like the golden ticket winners from Asian races and from some of the European races. It's such a hard, difficult race to handicap because there's just so much talent. Like I said, I came down to 16 or 17 names for my top 10, and I deleted and cut, paste over and over again trying to find it. And I can see that, like, I know for a fact I've got one name, omitted from my top 10 that is way high on yours. So I guess we can just dive right into it in terms of the women's field. What you got?
Well, a couple of thoughts, I guess.
Sure.
I want to say first on, I think as has been the case in the last several years, I think the women are going to race smart. Mm-hmm. So if you go back to 2019, Courtney went off the front, and there was really a chase pack as far back as half an hour with Claire Gallagher, Brittany Peterson, a few others. And once Courtney dropped, it really became kind of a pack race. I don't know if Courtney will do that again. It's 4 years later. She might go off the front. She might have a few chasers with her. But I think it will be much more of a tactical race in large part because of this first 30 miles.
Yes.
So let's talk about Camille for a second. In terms of raw foot speed, right? If this was a dry, clean course, you would be hard-pressed not to pick Camille for a podium spot, if not for the win. But she's had enough tough time with the technical stuff, with the snow. I mean, I remember when she dropped out in 2017 at Red Star Ridge, mile 16. She had fallen 3 times. I think even had fallen on her face at one point. Like, it had been rough. She is the first to admit she's not, like, dialing in this, like, sloppy technical stuff.
Yeah.
I think if Camille makes it through that first 30 and she's in range, it's game on.
Yeah.
What Courtney and Katie and the rest of these top 5, the second 5 from last year do through there will do a lot to determine how this plays out. You asked where the race starts. I think for the women's race, it is definitely not going to start until the river crossing. Okay. I think you've got, the Emilys and the Leahs and the Taylors, and the Katie Asmiths, they're going to be smart in the high country, and they're going to be even smarter through the burn scar.
Yeah.
But they get to Cal 2, and they know the river crossing is coming. They know there's a couple hours till the cool of night, and it's going to be game on. So I think more than most years that I've watched this race, there's a real chance that the winner could come from a chase pack if there's any faltering up front with Courtney, Katie, or Camille.
Yeah, I mean, there's, that's what it comes down to. I think that we both agree. I mean, I don't think it would be, busting open any surprises in terms of who we think is the prohibitive favorite in this race. But it has happened before where Courtney was not able to finish the race, and then it is game on. Yeah. And then it's, anybody's race. And if it's not Courtney, it could genuinely be one of 14 or 15 people if they have the great day. And that's one of the things about Camille that I look at is that if Camille's having a great day, she's arguably unbeatable. But the course is not going to be playing in her favor. So I think that we both have her, potentially having a successful day, depending on your version of success. She might not call it successful because I know how badly she wants to win this race. But I think that she is going to have potentially a strong showing. At least that's...
All right. So here's my top 10. You
sure,
ready?
Yeah.
I'll jump right in.
All right.
Courtney DeWalter, number 1. Katie Scheid. Keely Henniger. So there's your podium. Camille
fourth. Really?
Mm-hmm. The snow keeps melting. It's not going to be hot. Who knows? I mean, she may have a lot of dirt to run on. Leah Yingling, perhaps one of the smartest runners out there. 5th. Katie Asmith, 6th. Emily Hawgood, 7th. Heather Jackson, 8th. Taylor Nolan, 9th. And I've got to pull the emotional heartstrings and go with Casey Lichtai, 10th.
We've got about 6 or 7 names in common. We've got a couple that we wildly vary on, though. I'm just going to start out by saying that Katie Scheid is not in my top 10, which is I have another question later on. It's which pick might you regret? That's probably the one that I might regret. Number 1, I've got Courtney. Number 2, I've got Keely Henniger. Number 3, Camille Herron. Although I have to hedge on Camille. I feel like it's either going to be this or this. We just don't know until, like you said, as the snow keeps melting, it plays to her strengths.
Disclaimer: 3 of each of our picks are probably going to drop.
That's trail carnage. That's how it works. Yeah. Number 4, I've got Casey. It seems like Casey is healthy, and we've been maybe just kind of taking it for granted because she hasn't had that wow result recently. But for not having a wow result, she still finished 4th at Javelina 100, and still finished strong at Black Canyon. It's like she's still out there kicking butt and taking names,
and she knows the course better than any of these on our list, except possibly Nicole Bitter. So
yeah, absolutely. Number 5, I've got Leah Yingling. Number 6, Heather Jackson. Number 7, I've got Riley Brady. Now, Riley came out to Javelina 100 and posted a sub 15-hour race there. And I have no doubt that Riley, if they're ready to rock and roll, I saw them out at the training camp getting the miles in. I have no doubt that Riley has the foot speed to finish in the top 10.
I had them in that sort of 11 to 14 area too. I saw Riley also at the training camp. Great attitude, running with the group, taking in the course. It was a tough call. As I think most viewers and listeners know, I tend to, tie goes to the experience.
That's fair.
I think this second 5 from last year, they're so smart. There's so much experience. Riley ended up sort of 12th, 13th on my depth chart, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see them slide into 6th, 7th.
Number 8, I've got Emily Hawgood. Emily, I didn't realize how great of a year she had last year. Between Western States and UTMB, it's how can, and only 28. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Emily finish in, higher than 8th. Number 9, I've got a bit of a dark horse, Mandy Holmes. So Mandy Holmes, this is her 4th or 5th time running Western States, and she's had a mixed bag here. I believe her best finish was 14th a few years ago. But I've also watched Mandy run, and if you're talking about a race where somebody has to be patient, Mandy's going to be right there for it, because we've seen her at Desert Solstice the last couple of years not be among the first 2 or 3 women to hit the 100-mile mark, but when 24 hours is elapsed on the track at Central High School, Mandy's like second, third, fourth, and also has a national team spot. So I know that, and Mandy's also a Northern California native. So she's been doing the work up there. She's been, she's put in her time on the course. I saw her out at training camp as well. And I feel like, if not now, when? And, I think that
that's a good pick. That's a sneaky pick.
And number 10, I got to go with somebody, talking about experience paying. I got Nicole Bitter at number 10. But that's the crazy thing is that, I'm leaving people like Katie Scheid and Katie Asmuth and Megan Morgan and Taylor Nolan out of my top 10. Not because I don't think they're super talented. They are, but because this field is so tough to handicap.
Well, and same thing. I've known Nicole Bitter for a decade. I can't believe I'm leaving her out.
Yeah.
But we decided that we're going to do 10 deep, and so we got to draw the line somewhere.
Absolutely.
But I think it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. I'm curious about the tactics with the snow and the slop and then the not so hot temperatures. I think it's going to be a fascinating race to watch.
One more question about the women's field. Do you think that the winner breaks 17 hours?
I think they're going to be pretty close.
Okay.
I think I don't think they break 16:47, which is the course record.
Yeah.
But I do think they've been creeping closer. Ruth Croft was in 17:10, 11, something like that. I think they're pretty close. If they don't break 17 to win this thing, you've got to be well below 17:30.
So the record on the women's side is just such a fascinating thing to me. 16:47. How did that happen, and why has it been so untouchable for a decade?
Well, first of all, 2012 was an extraordinarily cool year. So right now we're looking at 2023 having a high of 80 degrees in Auburn, which would be a tie for the fourth coolest.
Okay.
2012 was a high of 71 in Auburn.
Oh, wow.
It actually rained in Robinson Flat. It rained on race day. That combined with virtually no snow made Ellie Greenwood and Timothy Olson's course records. Timothy Olson's course record has since been beaten, but the time, I think there were something like 146 silver buckles that year.
Oh, wow.
It was just an incredibly fast year. One I regret I still didn't get to run. I was battling a knee injury, and I had to take that year off.
For frame of reference, the average number of silver buckles or sub 24-hour finishes is roughly about 100, give or take?
Yeah, it would be 100 would be a little tiny bit above average. But
Okay.
I think they're going to exceed 100 this year.
All right, let's move on to the men's field. This men's field has no returning champions. We will have a new Western States champion on the men's side. Defending champion Adam Peterman had to bow out with injury. Basically, I guess a hip fracture of some kind or some.
What's it called?
It's
some sort of in his sacrum, sacral fracture.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but and of course Jim Walmsley is working on things over in Europe, so it's going to be a brand new day here at Western States, and we're going to be crowning a new champion. There's a lot of international talent in this field. You're going to be heading out to Western States as part of the International Runners Breakfast or dinner tomorrow night, and I'm sure that some of the names that I'm going to reference, and I'm sure you'll reference as well, are going to be a part of that event. Where do we start when it comes to Western States? Is there somebody that you feel that it's their race to lose, or it's that they are the prohibitive favorite?
I don't think we have their race to lose, although some might disagree. I think we have at the very top, we have a ton of experienced 100-mile runners, and so I've separated them into experienced 100-mile runners versus experienced at Western States runners. And so in that first group, I think topping that list is Dakota Jones, who, first qualified for Western States, I think in 2010 or 2011, and for a variety of reasons turned down the spot. And this year, finally, at Javelina, where he broke the course record and was the only person to go under 13 hours, is certainly, last year was second in Ultra Runner of the Year voting, basically on the grounds of Hard Rock and Javelina. So in the not run it before but is a stud, you've got Dakota Jones at the top of the list. Next is Cole Watson. Got his golden ticket at Canyons is a local guy, has 100-mile experience, not at Western States.
No, Cole didn't. No, he didn't make it. That's right.
No,
that's right. He got
not.
third
and then the third of the 100-mile experience, not run Western States, was the guy who gave a scare to Killian at UTMB last year, Mathieu Blanchard from Germany, and he was at the training camp and afforded himself well. So 100-mile experience, not run the race before, you've got those three. In the run the race before and have 100-mile experience, I've got 4. Arlen Glick, 3rd place last year. Hayden Hawks, 2nd place last year. Tom Evans, 3rd place to Walmsley and Jared Hazen, and the 3rd man to ever run under 15 hours at Western States. And Cody Lind.
Yeah.
Cody Lind, 2-time top 10er, 4th place 2 years ago, 9th place last year, and has the bloodline at Western States. His grandfather was the medical director and a board member for 30 years at Western States. So I like that kind of magnificent 7, if you will. And I know there's a lot of names I'm leaving off, and we'll get into ordering them in a bit. But I think the winner is coming from one of those 7.
Okay, that's fair. Some of the names that you didn't address that I'd like to bring up. A couple of these international runners. I've been doing a little bit of research on some of the runners who gained golden tickets across the globe. In Thailand, one of them is Jiaju Zhao, and another one is Kanhua Luo. Are you familiar with either of them?
Say the first one again.
Jiaju Zhao.
Jiaju Zhao. Yes. I saw his Strava splits. He did a little training camp with Jason Koop.
Okay.
The week after the Memorial Day training camp, and he basically beat Walmsley's training run splits through the canyons.
He finished second.
So I mean,
he finished second at Canyon's 100-mile, 41 minutes ahead of Canyon Woodward.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're talking about a guy with some speed to burn. Only 28. So that's one of those names I came across. Another one was the Kanhua Luo, who beat Debo at the Marin 50-mile. So, I mean, again, beat it by a minute. But, another, highly talented international runner. Another international runner that we didn't even bring up is Ludwig Pomerat.
I know. And he doesn't seem to age. But he was in the top
6.
Top 6 last year, yeah.
Top 6. We've got other golden ticket winners such as J.P. Giblin, Daniel Jones, Anthony Costales, who came out here at Black Canyon. And I don't know what it was, but it seems like he was running angry that day. Like, it looked like he was feeling a little bit disrespected, perhaps, or maybe a little bit overlooked. And boy, he did not come away from Black Canyon disappointed.
And a note on Costales, probably the fastest marathoner in the course, in the race. I think Tom Evans has a 106 half or 103 half, but Costales has like a 213 marathon or something.
Wow.
But he beat Tom. I mean, Tom Evans getting a lot of attention as the guy to beat in this race this year. Costales beat him pretty handily out here at Black Canyon. And Black Canyon, by the way, in many ways mirrors a lot of the elevation change of Western States, a little bit of the trail surface. So don't go to sleep on Costales or even, Bandera's winner, Jeff Colt.
Yeah. Another international runner I wanted to bring up is Jiasing Shen. This is another individual with finished first at the Eiger 101K last year, 40 minutes ahead of Pau Capel. Like, that's impressive. And also finished 4th at CCC last year, only 5 minutes more than Hayden Hawk's previous course record. Now, CCC last year was an extremely fast race. If the 4th place finisher was only 5 minutes behind Hayden Hawk's course record, but it shows that he's capable of throwing down some fast times as well. Originally from Kunming, which I know Kunming is like 6,500 feet elevation. I don't know if he lives there or trains there regularly, but probably having grown up in elevation, probably doesn't hurt.
And I think this discussion right here is an excellent example of the continued globalization of our sport. And,
absolutely.
And both the wisdom and experience of the Western States organizers to broaden the golden ticket opportunities for runners, to broaden both the distances that they can run and the ways in which that they can qualify. I think it adds an element of excitement to the race that we haven't seen before.
I think that that's actually an entire podcast in and of itself. I mean, one of the cool things about being at training camp this year and hanging out in Forest Hill at that little diner and grabbing our coffee, and all of a sudden it's tweeted by the race who's the golden ticket races are, and all of a sudden the cafe is a buzz, and Craig Thornley walks in and he's kind of just like checking to see what the response is on social media. That was super cool to kind of be at ground zero for the big announcement.
Needless to say, his phone blew up that day.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah, I mean, he was right next to us in line when it was all going down, so it was cool to witness. I guess I'm just going to jump right into my top 10, and then we'll just hear from yours.
I went first before, so you should go first.
All right. My number one, I've got Tom Evans. A sub 15 at Western States has only been achieved by a handful of people, and he's the only one here that's done it. And I've seen him at Black Canyon. It almost looked like he was just kind of having fun out there, and so and finished second. I mean, that's pretty darn talented. So I think that Tom Evans is going to win. I've got Arlen Glick in second. Love Arlen. He's immensely talented, and he's always on the podium. I don't think he's ever actually not been on a podium for a 100-miler, and he's run a lot of them in a short period of time. Mm-hmm. So I've got Arlen second. Hopefully he has something left in the tank afterwards for Silverton next month. Dakota Jones I've got third. That was a hard one because Dakota is such a wild card in, he doesn't run fast races very often, but when he does very well. What we saw at Javelina, for him to break the course record was fantastic. I've got Hayden Hawks in fourth. And I guess that's the big four, and those four, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised in any way. It was more of like, okay, how can I justify this? Hayden has done very well here, 2 top 10 finishes in the last 2 runnings. There's no doubt that he's got the talent to finish first. It's just basically, I got to pick somebody. Number 5, I'm going to get a little bit crazy here. I'm picking Ryan Montgomery. So Ryan Montgomery, finishing second at Haviland 120-21, was not able to take his golden ticket last year. I believe he withdrew late due to injury, but got himself another golden ticket at Tarawera. So I think that Ryan, he's also got a sub 13-hour 100-mile. So he's got the ability on trail, as we've seen here, and he's also got the flat-out speed that I think that Ryan, if he's healthy, could easily finish in the top 10. Number 6, I've got Cole Watson. I love talking to Cole and seeing how enthusiastic he has become about ultra running. Obviously coming from a running shorter distance background, like talking to him at Javelina and at training camp, he's just so excitable. Mm-hmm. Like I'm really excited to see his enthusiasm. Number 7, I've got a personal friendly pick in Scott Traer. We've seen Scott do great things here in Arizona. He had a top 10 finish last year. I don't see a reason, even at the quote advanced age of 42, that he can't do it again. In fact, fun fact about all of my top 10: everybody but Scott is between the ages of 28 and 32. Number 8, I've got Jonathan Ray. We saw him, run a 13:05 at Javelina. He ran 16th last year at Western States. Very respectable for, I believe, his debut there. So there's no doubt that, the difference between 16th and, making a top 10 is not so overwhelming that it couldn't be, that things couldn't roll differently for him. Number 9, I've got Jeff Colt. I have a feeling that if I didn't, that we would probably hear about it from Jeff Colt on social media. So, but no, I think that Jeff has proven. I mean, he finished 11th last year, and that's got to be the most frustrating finish in the entirety of Western States. It's like 4th in the Olympics. Yeah. So I think that Jeff Colt will be finishing 9th, and then 10th. I've got one of our international runners, Jiasing Shen. And again, seeing that he dropped 40 minutes on Pau Capel and, was able to run CCC fairly close to what Hayden Hawks ran it, guy's got talent. Yeah. So even though I literally have never seen him run, there's no doubt that the talent is there to potentially be a top 10 finisher.
That's great. Yeah. That's great. Well, we have the same top 4 in different order.
Okay.
So my magnificent 7 remains intact. But I have Arlen Glick winning. I have Arlen Glick. He has done his homework. He came here last year. He is self-proclaimed eats 100-milers for breakfast. Spent 2.5 weeks out in Northern California on the course. I think the knock on him that how can a guy from Ohio win Western States? I think he'll be this year's Mike Morton when Mike came from Virginia and won in 1997. Dakota Jones in second. I think Dakota is just primed. He's not going to waste his opportunity to be here. He's fun-loving. He doesn't take it as seriously as he did 10 years ago. I think he's got a real good shot at chasing Arlen down, possibly, but certainly keeping Arlen honest. Third place, Hayden Hawks. I really like Hayden, and I know, he went from 9th to 2nd. Peterman's not back, but I see Hayden in 3rd, and then Tom Evans in 4th. So our top 4 are the same, just a little mixed around there. And then I do have Cole Watson in 5th. Mathieu Blanchard. I just can't ignore chasing Killian down at UTMB in 6th. And then my sentimental favorite of Cody Lind in 7th. So I take that magnificent 7, right? Arlen, Dakota, Hayden, Tom, Mathieu. Cole, Mathieu, and Cody. And I only have 3 spots left, right? And I'm thinking, okay, you've got all these names we've talked about, guys who've done it in the past, guys who haven't done it in the past, guys who've impressed with the golden tickets, guys who, have been in the race before. So 8, 9, 10, I'm going in 8th with Anthony Costales. He could very well be significantly higher. So he's one of these. He's got some 100-mile experience, not Western States experience. Then I'm going with Tyler Green. We can't sleep on Tyler Green.
4th place a couple years ago.
He's been in the hunt. He's smart. He will lurk in the back and then surge at the end. And then probably for similar reasons to you, Jeff Colt 10th. And you know what? To be honest, if Jeff and Scott Traer are battling back and forth at 10th and 11th, I mean, that could be a race within a race worth following on the live stream because it could definitely happen.
Yeah, and again, going through our picks, we left off some extremely talented runners. We didn't even mention J.P. Giblin,
right.
Who won a golden ticket this year. Janusz Kowalczyk, who won golden ticket at Black Canyon.
And ran great.
Yeah. Rod Farvard, Adam Mary. These are super talented runners that neither one of us picked in our top 10. But again, wouldn't surprise us probably in the least if they happen to sneak into the back half of the top 10 as well. So those are our picks. I posted mine on the Free Trail Fantasy. Shout out to Free Trail for offering this opportunity for those of us to embarrass ourselves with our picks and to keep them there for all time.
I'll steer clear of that, but I've got it on. I've got them all on I Run Far anyway, which might even be worse than Free Trail.
Yeah, I can delete a tweet. You can't delete that. So one of the things that we did the last time we did a preview talking about Cocodona was we picked runners that have a fascinating story to us. And I think we agreed that we were each going to pick a male and a female runner.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll just kind of take turns bouncing back and forth on that.
Do you want to start with male or female?
Let's start with female.
Okay, why don't you go first with your female let's call it intriguing stories at this year's
Intriguing
race.
story.
Yeah.
So my female is Callie Vinson. Callie is a local runner here to Arizona. She has an entry through a sponsor, GU. I believe her qualifier was Moab. And
the Moab 240, thank you very much.
Yeah, Moab 240. And so Callie has had a very interesting journey. For those that are not familiar, she has lost over 200 pounds and is, an advocate for body positivity and has busted her ass to get herself in shape for this race. She has one of the best possible guidance sources, actually a couple of them, to be honest. She, has been under the, tutelage of Scott Traer for one, and also Magdalena Boulay was helping to crew her at the training camp because Magda was who selected her to be GOO's sponsored runner this year. So Callie Vinson is, I hope she has the day of her life out there. I hope that she accomplishes everything she sets out to and finishes this race, and that people can appreciate her journey and feel inspired by it.
Well, that you shared with me the story of Callie too when we were driving home, and
we had a lot of time to talk about stuff.
Yeah, we did. But well deserving of the GOO spot in the race, and the president of GOO, Magdalena Boulay, a former Cougar winner at Western States, a member of the board of Western States, and Scott Traer. Yeah, Callie will not be able to get away with saying I didn't know what I was in for because she has guidance and support that's like world class.
Yeah.
On the women's side, speaking of sort of world class, I've chosen for my intriguing story someone who's been around the sport forever, is a 7-time Western States finisher, and is 62 years old, and that's Pam Reed.
Oh yeah.
Pam has been around Arizona quite a bit. She was the race director for the Tucson Marathon for almost 30 years. Currently splits time between here in Scottsdale and Wyoming, and has an incredible story. She's had her ups and downs, but about a year and a half ago, broke her pelvis in the midst of a Ironman triathlon race in a bicycling accident, and then, as luck would have it, found her name pulled in the Western States and Hard Rock Lottery, as well as a race that's near and dear to her heart, the Badwater 135.
She's a 2-time winner, yeah.
That she's a former winner. So Pam is trying to do something that maybe it's been done before. We'll have to ask Aid Station Fireball. But
yeah, Liam, shout out.
She is running as a 62-year-old, running Western States, Badwater, and Hard Rock in a 20-day period. And I've been talking to her. I've been talking. I mean, I don't know. I mean, if you figure Western States takes 2 days, Badwater takes 2.5 days, and Hard Rock takes 2 days, there's not many days in between for her to do that. But she's coming into Western States wanting to run her best. She's had a so-and-so build up. She, had some great runs. She ended up missing the cutoff at Canyons, but she is primed and ready, and comes to the race as someone with, 250 ultra finishes, comes to the race with a fair dose of humility, I would say, in coming into Western States, knowing that she's not any younger, that it's still a hard race, that the cutoffs are tight, especially in the first 40 miles, and she has to come with her game face on. So I'm really excited to see how old Pam does, and look forward to seeing her cross that finish line.
Who's your male pick for someone to follow in the non-elites?
Well, before moving out here, I was an old Beast Coaster. I was in the Beast Coast. I was at the Beast Coast for almost 15 years in between living here and now living here again. And, the beastliest state in the Beast Coast is Pennsylvania. The rocks, the humidity, the bugs, and we're blessed this year with a runner from Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, 75 years old, Gene Dykes.
Oh yeah,
he is going to be. He's got a javelina finish in his resume, somewhere around 29 and change. But also more recently, back in March, in a fixed time 12-hour race. So this is just a little indication of his fitness. He exceeded 100K. So right around 63 miles, albeit a flat, controlled environment, but 63 miles in 12 hours.
That's a lot.
So he can cover the ground, right? And he's 75 years old. So I think he has the quite legitimate potential, especially now that we're seeing it's likely to be pretty cool on race day, or at least cooler. He's going to have to get through the snow, but he has the potential to become the oldest finisher ever at Western States. Currently, the oldest female finisher is 70, oldest male finisher is 73. He's full on 75, and he has a shot at finishing this thing. So I can't wait to watch the Beast Coast Zone, Ballackinwood, Pennsylvania, Gene Dykes.
Yeah, Gene Dykes is immensely talented. If you were to go, if you're not familiar, if you were to go on to American Records websites for ultra distance, Gene Dykes, like basically age group 70 plus, he's writing that book as he goes and just kicking butt and taking names even at the age of 75. On the other end, my male pick is the youngest person in the field. He is, I say kid, and I don't want to marginalize him because he is so young. He's 21 years of age, and that's Zach Bates. We've gotten to know Zach here in Arizona because he is from the Pine Top area, and he races with Aravaipa events quite a bit. Zach is 21 years old, and Zach is autistic, and he is an inspiring person. He's been profiled by many news media outlets about how he doesn't allow his diagnosis to define who he is. You know, it's a part of who he is, but he's a runner, damn it. And he's not only that, he's a fast runner too. I mean, sub 6 hour at Crown King this year, that's no joke. He's a sub 5 hour 50K runner. It was weird. I actually saw him at training camp and got to talk to his mom a little bit as well, actually, after we saw the film, after I believe it was the Sunday night run. And, you know, the fact that, I went up and, said hi to Zach for a few minutes, and she saw him talking to me, and she didn't realize that, I guess the local awareness of Zach and his inspiring story. So Zach Bates is somebody not only who is going to come out there and finish this race. I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish sub 24 or sub 22, maybe not this year, but in the years to come. He's going to be a guy who is going to be a part of the scene for a long time. And not only has he got Western States on deck for this summer, he's running UTMB too. So he's got a heck of a year coming up ahead of him. At the ripe old age of 21, made it in on one ticket. And I got to say, I'm really excited to see what Zach Bates does in this race.
Wow, that is a fantastic story. And I remember seeing him at the camp too. He was obviously taking it in, studying the course, taking his time at the aid station, realizing the undertaking he was about to, take on. Fantastic.
Yeah, and he was one of the final people to actually come into Michigan Bluff on Saturday when we were out there training him. That is not indicative of his true talent. Mm-hmm. He is fast. And, the fact, I believe, if I remember correctly, he was actually possibly kind of just hiking it out with his father, and kind of doing some course recon. But that's one of the cool things about Western States is the training camp in particular that I noticed is that there are some people that were out there to peacock. There's no doubt. There were people that were out there to like throw down and put down fast times. And then, for instance, what was it, like 45 minutes to an hour after the leaders came into Rucky Chucky, along come Arlen Glick and Annie Hughes, like hanging out. I mean, talk about like super talented runners that are just kind of meandering through the course and having a fun day of it. So for those that haven't run Western States and want to experience it, go and check out the Memorial Day weekend. It's as they say, one of the best values in trail running.
Gosh,
it's basically $50, $55 a day, and you get bus shuttle from where you need to get to, whether it be to the start or, you start and then you run to the finish and they bus you back. But you also get a lunch out of it. And it's also an opportunity. If you're a fanboy or a fangirl of this sport, man, you're not going to get an opportunity to have, FaceTime with elite runners like you will at training camp, where it's a much more casual environment than perhaps any other opportunity.
In a laid-back place, you get the full Western States aid station treatment. I mean, the full buffet, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. But we've just highlighted, this is something that's important. We've highlighted, 20-plus runners on the elite side, highlighted 4 stories that we're interested in following. But the truth of the matter is, there are 380 stories that are going to unfold in just 4 days on Saturday. Every runner has a story, whether they were lucky enough to get picked with one ticket or they've waited 8-9 years to get in and they finally have their opportunity. And so when you see those stories unfold, when you see those runners finally arrive at the track and circle the track with their crews and all the time and all the training and all the effort that's gone into it, it makes you realize that this is an event that kind of transcends human experience on the mundane level and can really be transformative for people, whether it's a 21-year-old Zach Bates or a 75-year-old Gene Dykes or anybody in between. That can change lives. And I think that's what keeps me going back every year, and I think that's what makes it a special event.
Bryce, do we have any questions, or do you have time for a couple questions if any have come up in the chat? Or
Yeah. 1 second here.
Okay. While Bryce is pulling that up, on the men's side, one of the questions I forgot to ask: will the winner run sub 15:30?
Oh yeah.
You think?
Yeah, I think they'll run sub 15. I don't think they'll
Really?
run. Yeah, now that it's going to be 80 degrees, and I think once they make it through the snow, they'll be flying. So I don't see 14:09 being threatened. Maybe 14:30 in states, but privately people can have cameras, and the beauty of the film Sally and her team created was, her pacers had cameras.
Yes.
And were able to kind of follow along and chat with Sally and so forth. And I could see that potentially happening at a race like Western States. I haven't seen it happen in quite the professional way, for a Western States runner as I saw Sally pull it off at Cocodona. So I think that could be something that's interesting, because I think where there is saturation is, here's another video of someone in an aid station. They're going to dump ice over their head, and they're going to eat food, and they're going to change their shoes, and and they're maybe going to say a few words.
People do love that stuff,
right,
though.
They do. But I think that could be a saturation point.
Bryce, do we have anything, or?
We sure do. Let me turn my mic up a little bit.
Sure.
Maybe not that much. All right. So first question. If Mike McKnight gets in off the wait list, where does he fall in the results? From Mallory.
So Mike McKnight is about 8 to 10 spots down. And the weird thing is, we've talked about this. Maybe that's actually an aside that we could have. Like, we have another friend locally, Lisa Kravitz, shout out Lisa, who is about 2 spots behind Mike McKnight. And last year, Western States went off short 2 entrants. Mm-hmm. So I have told Lisa, show up. And I'm sure that Mike McKnight, if he's wanting to run the race this year, is of the same mindset. There's a couple California locals who are just right up the street. I believe one in Sacramento. There's only about 10, 15 names on the wait list left. But if Mike McKnight runs this race, I believe he's run it in the past, I don't think that he's necessarily a contender for the top 10. And that's not a strike against him and his talents, but it's just not his wheelhouse.
I think it's too short.
It's only 100 miles.
And I think it's kind of too easy.
Yeah.
I could see him, being in the top 20. I think when he was here before, he did a 21, 22 hour type thing. But on the wait list, I do think it's important to note there could still be where there might be room on the wait list right now. This is Tuesday before the race, is some elites that might still drop.
That's a good point.
Some elites who might just have a nagging injury. They're waiting till the last minute to see if it comes around. So, I would say to anybody on the wait list, if it's not too much of a burden for you to go out there to Olympic Valley, go out and try your luck and see if someone doesn't show up.
Yeah, I would say, talking about Mike McKnight, I would expect him to be in the 20-21 hour range.
Yeah, 20-21 hour
which
range.
Is an absolutely, it's probably a, top 25, top 30 time, but, it's just not in the cards for him probably to be at the lead pack in this kind of race. Because like you said, it's just too short and too flat.
Yeah, it's too short and too flat.
We're expecting cooler weather than normal. What does that mean for some of the racers? Are there any specific racers that come to mind that would have advantage with the cooler weather?
I certainly think those runners from Europe and those runners from Colorado and the Northwest and so forth will definitely have an advantage. The Dakotas of the world, the Tom Evanses and Mathieu Blanchards, the Courtneys. We're talking about 80 degrees in Auburn. It's just conventional wisdom means it's going to be 90 at the most in El Dorado Canyon and 70 at Forest Hill based on that. I mean, people might be wearing puffies in Forest Hill. So, I mean, it does level the playing field in for those athletes who may come from more mountainous environments and but everybody at this level, everybody's done their heat training. I think for the middle and back of the pack, as I said earlier, it means a lot of 24-hour buckles. It means if you can get to Robinson Flat, that next 70 miles, you're done with the snow. That next 70 miles is smooth sailing. It's 80 degrees. It might not be any warmer than it was for training weekend.
I was actually just going to say that. I think it was in the low 80s when we were there just a few weeks ago. And if that's what it's like, these runners are going to have it's going to be up to each individual runner, but there's no doubt if they've run qualifiers and they've made it this far into the process, the finisher rate could be one of the highest in history.
I think it could be a record finishers rate because the snow in the high country will keep people under control, and then the incredibly runnable conditions from Robinson to the finish will allow them to run fast. So heads up, I think we could have a record silver buckle year and a record finishers year. I don't see course records going down again because of that first 30 miles.
Okay. I think we have time for one more, Bryce.
Let's see. Do you guys have picks on who's going to run the fastest split around the track?
I'll jump right in. You gotta go with the Utah Blast, Anthony Costales. I mean, the guy has incredible running form. I think he will crush that final 250 and maybe get the segment on it. On the women's side, no matter where she ends up finishing, she's going to be ready to blaze at the end. I'm giving Nicole Bitter the segment on the track for the women.
I cannot name names, but I feel it's going to be the final person to cross that finish line because it's going to be something where it's like super close. I mean, whether it be like Karen Bonet a couple years ago or Paul Bonet a couple years ago, like where it's going to come down to needing to get it done and maybe with seconds to spare. That's such an inspiring thing to see. Following it on the live stream, last year with I can't remember her name, but the woman who just missed by about 2 minutes. I was crying while watching it. I couldn't help but just feel so gutted for her.
So the fastest split will be the last runner.
I believe so. I think that's
a
kind of a hot take, but it's what I've got. I also have one last thing before we wrap things up. So we've talked about your affinity for Western states, and obviously if you want to check out AJW's Instagram, he's got his buckles and his M10s and M6. He has top 10 bibs posted in a cool little arrangement. So I have a souvenir that was given to me, but I already had it. So I'm regifting this in the interest of full disclosure. But it's something that we talked about briefly. But so this is the Coconino Cowboys Jamboree poster from 2018, autographed by all the original Coconino Cowboys. And I am gifting this to you. As you can put it as part of your Western States memorabilia and memories collection. It was a limited edition throw-in from Chris Thornley at Squirrel's Nut Butter. If you made like a certain size order, and you actually got an autographed Squirrel's Nut Butter stick. Like the case was autographed by all the Cowboys as well, but I don't think that anybody would want that regifted to them.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I'll hang it in my podcast studio.
Yeah, just a little piece of history that I thought was from a fun
Chris.
time and fun
That's
era.
fantastic.
So I guess that about wraps it up for us here. AJW, always a pleasure. I love talking. I mean, we do this off the air in the interest of like being completely transparent. AJW and I are talking races and running all the time, whether it be while we're road tripping or whether we're in our group text with our friend Matt Feldake, and so we are. This is just another opportunity for us to do something we love doing anyways. So,
well, thanks a lot for having me on, and I can't wait to get in the car tomorrow morning and get up there. So it's going to be a great weekend. It's the best week of the year. So for everybody
Absolutely.
running, have a great race. For everybody following along, enjoy, and let's enjoy this triumph of the human spirit.
All right. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good week. Be sure to tune in.
Yeah. Bye-bye.